Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm your host Sharmeen Ali. Recently, we've seen a high-profile case of domestic violence in Pakistan that involved a celebrity and his wife who went public on social media to talk about her injuries due to domestic violence of her husband in their home while she was expecting a child. Now, after this incident, many other people came out with their own personal examples with domestic violence, whether it was at the hands of their spouses or whether they witnessed it as children with their parents. And it was just a very heartfelt and painful thing to see that there's so many cases of domestic violence which have been taking place in Pakistan. And what are the rates of domestic violence and all of that? We're going to discuss that on our program today, and the causes and why are there stigmas behind talking about it. All of these things need to be discussed, and we will be talking about it on our program today. We will also be talking about the unprovoked firing across the line of control which takes place quite frequently from Indian occupied Kashmir to Pakistan Azad Kashmir, and recently it has cost the life of a soldier and another 2 civilians, including a small 12-year-old child and a woman. Also in these cross-border firings, livestock get killed, which are a main source of income for these poor rural communities who live on the line of control. We will be talking about this as well in our program, and we will also be discussing the new plastic bag ban, which is going to take effect on the 14th of August, coming soon. And the countdown was started by the Minister of State for the Environment, Zartaj Gul, yesterday towards that date, and we'll be discussing about that and the implications and the fines, etc. We'll also be talking about the stock market at the end of our program, so stay with us for all of that. But right now, we're going to first start with the topic about domestic violence. We have with us in our studios Dr. Farzana Bari, who is a human rights activist. But before we meet her, thank you, ma'am, for being here. Before we start talking to her, let's show you a report on this topic.
Domestic violence in Pakistan is a multifaceted and a prevalent issue. With the recent global rise in awareness towards spousal and other gender-based violence, Pakistani media too has put the issue under the spotlight. According to Pakistan Demographic and Health Survey held in 2013, around 20% of Pakistani men believe that they are justified in using physical violence if their wives argue with them. Similarly, 20% of men also believe that it is acceptable to beat one's wife if she goes without their permission. What is more surprising, perhaps, is that a larger percentage of women justify domestic violence than men. According to the National Institute of Population Studies, most women who have experienced violence from their spouses are more likely to accept their beatings as a part of masculinity and marriage. It is common for married women in Pakistan to live with their husband's family. As a result, women in Pakistan not only face violence by their husbands, but also the in-laws. Surprisingly, even the women's immediate family does not take action, for example, in cases of honor killings. The Pakistani constitution and laws have been against gender-based violence since the country's conception. However, laws are seldom implemented. With low literacy rates, very few women seek legal counsel. Women who want to seek legal help are discouraged by their families. For a long-term solution to this problem, both women and men need to achieve higher education, more exposure to electronic media, and easier access to legal help.
So that was sort of a very disturbing and alarming report. Let's introduce again Dr. Farzana Bari. Thank you again for being here. Dr. Farzana, now we saw this report and it says a lot of things that how in our culture Pakistani males justify being violent towards their spouses if she argues or if she leaves the house without permission. And then there's domestic violence at the hands of in-laws. And there are women who are justifying it even more than men. What does this say about the prevailing mindset of our society? And we'll get into the cases that we've seen coming up more recently, not in very much detail, but about exactly what are we seeing over here? It's very disturbing, ma'am.
I think obviously it is about patriarchy, and it is about also notion of women as property of men, you know. So because of that, normally women, especially in relationship within the marriage, you know, men always, you know, culturally, traditionally assume that they have now a superior status and they have a more control over women's sexuality, women's bodies. Women is supposed, you know, like the wife particularly, I think, considered as if she belongs to him, and that's why in our culture there's a very strong notion of men's honor residing in women's bodies, and that's why that leads to, when if there is violation or no violation, but this whole, this honor killing phenomena and all that is linked with that.
So the problems that we are facing, the abused women are facing, what are the laws right now which can be implemented to protect them?
Look, I mean, although we had been struggling to have a domestic violence law, and I think it has taken ages, and there was a lot of resistance to pass domestic violence law because, again, essentially because home is considered as a private arena, and the gender relationship, particularly husband and conjugal, relationship between husband and wife is considered as private. So now actually almost, I think, in all provinces, with the exception of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I think Khyber Pakhtunkhwa law is still has gone to the Council of Islamic Ideology. It hasn't been passed, but otherwise, in every other province in Pakistan, domestic violence has been criminalized.
Okay.
It has not been considered now as a private affair. I think police supposedly intervened. If women goes and complained about domestic violence or even a threat of domestic violence, police supposed to intervene in that. So in a way, it has been criminalized in in most of the sort of provinces in Pakistan. I think with the exception of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Right.
So
And what
law is there.
What is the punishment?
I think it depending on the nature of violence. Obviously, if there is a physical harm, is involved, or if there is only threat is involved. So it depends. But domestic violence, I think it varies. From a 1 year to even life imprisonment. Again, it's depending on the nature of violence inflicted on women. But I think the good thing is that it has been criminalized. It is not considered as a private affair anymore in Pakistani law.
Right. So recently, when we've seen these celebrities and their issue of domestic violence coming out on social media, other celebrities have come out and said, I was also abused. And then a lot of women, especially, very few men have come out and said that they were abused, and then their mothers, and all of these stories were coming out. And it was really painful to see this, and that it's been going on for generations. It's not just now, it was before.
That's
and
right.
people are speaking out about it, which is a good thing. But why the veil of silence? Why has there been so much of this chilling silence about this issue for so
I
long?
think it is, as you said, like it is very painful to see, how rampant this phenomena is, which cut across the boundaries of class, region, rural, urban backgrounds. So it's not it is
Absolutely.
happening only, people who are not educated or who are poor. It happened
everywhere.
across the class, and so I think that's very painful. But the good thing is that people are beginning to talk about it. What you asked me, I think there has been a silence around it. One of the reason is that it is considered for ages as a private affair, and also often it's considered, if women are talking about it, it's part of the femininity, it's part of a good woman, that if anything happens within the family, they should not go out and talk about it. So they should not make it public. I think that has also given some kind of impunity also to men who were inflicting gender-based violence within the arena of home. So I think, and often it's considered that maybe there's something wrong with the woman, or maybe she has done
That's another
something bad.
excuse that they say, that the woman caused the guy to hit
Precisely.
her. That is absolutely ridiculous.
So a lot of time, I think these women were also very reluctant to go out. And again, there aren't a lot of kind of redressal mechanism in place. So women are also very aware of that. Maximum what happens if they are countering violence, they'll go home, their own like family homes, and often when they go home, their parents will also tell them that actually their husband home is their real a place, and often they're sent back. So obviously they don't have any redressal mechanisms. Then there are social and cultural taboos attached. Again, if there is domestic violence happening, something, people will talk bad about women rather than men who are the perpetrators. So I think this is a combination of factor, and a lot of time women are not economically and socially empowered. So if they'll talk about it, and if they're if they're thrown out of the house by their husband, often they feel they are not economically, in a position to take their children and be on their own, and can sustain themselves.
Right.
So a lot of time, because of this economic, I think, dependence on men, women continue to also, bear that violence till it becomes
Fair enough.
really.
But there were certain women, like when
So-
on this whole social media activity that was going on, there were certain women who were economically empowered. There was a lady who was a dentist, and she was in the United
Yes.
Kingdom. She spoke up about how a few hours or days after her
Yes.
marriage, her husband hit her for not making breakfast or something. Yet she stayed in the marriage for 20 years, and then she left after many subsequent beatings. Now
Yes.
people were asking her, why didn't you leave? You are an empowered, educated lady. There are so many reasons why even
Yes.
empowered women don't leave an abusive marriage.
Yeah.
And can you please get into a few of
Sure.
those? Like they don't, sometimes it's out of affection for the perpetrator, or they don't want to be a single mother. And also there's a concern amongst girls that who is going to raise this child as their own? Will other
Yes.
men raise somebody's child?
Precisely.
Yeah.
No, I think it's not, if women are, empowerment is not about one aspect. It's a very holistic concept, So it's not if women are independent, they are necessarily empowered, because if they are not, for example, if they don't have a gender consciousness or a feminist consciousness, if they subscribe to, a lot of women do also internalize that patriarchal, concept and notion, and this whole notion of like a good woman should not, talk about their family issues, and take it like, it's like washing their, dirty linen in the public. And if they internalize those concepts, they are not really empowered. So a lot of time you feel a woman who's economically independent but beaten up and has not spoken about it, So there are, as you said, so it's not, empowerment is only women who are really not only, of course, economically empowered, but also they have to be empowered, from
Mentally, that's a very
they should
important
also,
point,
they should not subscribe to this whole notion of femininity, where women are not go against their husbands or against their sort of families. And in our culture, family is seen as a locus of love, as there is nothing happens, it's all, which is true. I mean, of course we get a lot of support from the family, but I think there's a lot of violation takes place within family, whether it is against women, against children, sexual abuse even, like a lot of incest and all that is, which is getting increasingly reported more and more in our culture. So I'll think to go against this whole concept of family as a arena of protection and sport and love and all that, it becomes very, very difficult. And as you say, people questions like why they have not spoken earlier, because there's a lot of psychological cycle as well, people have to
Particularly in our
understand
culture. It's a culture.
psychologically also, and also when the relationship, for especially the domestic and relationship of husband and wife are very complex, because even if a husband is beaten, there is a cycle when if they are start apologizing, then the women will feel okay, fine, and then honeymoon period starts. So there is a lot of psychological studies which tells you,
cyclical.
and it's cyclical, and then again it happens, and again when the husband starts asking for forgiveness, she feels okay maybe, and getting more attention, and she will forgive, and then its honeymoon period starts, and then late again when he inflicts.
Now,
So it says there are a lot of psychological it's not that easy also to get out of that. So what I'm saying, I think it's a very, it's not it's a very not misplaced question to also question women when they talk about what has happened to them, in terms of violence later, after a few years. And people also question why she has not spoken earlier. And I think it's not easy. Psychologically, it takes time for women to come out,
And to gain confidence.
To
I
gain
think that happens with
confidence,
time.
and
ma'am, now we're talking about domestic violence. Abuse is not just physical, it's also mental,
Mental, of
emotional,
course.
financial, which happens a lot.
Of course.
And it happens in many households, like you mentioned, whether it's they're educated or well off financially or not. Naturally, the rate is higher in rural areas, and that's where this mindset prevails, that it's okay if a man does it, and that does happen. And even the women say that, okay, it's all right. So this particular issue now of domestic abuse, we can call it, because it's
Right.
psychological and emotional
Yes,
as well.
of course.
Can you just touch upon that? What is psychological and emotional abuse? Because many women are not aware they're being abused, and then they develop health problems and manic, like serious heavy depression, for which they're not even getting medical treatment, and they're raising small children.
Yeah, I think there's different form, you know, maybe if threat of violence, for example. Maybe husband has never lifted a finger on a woman, but constantly threatening or also putting women down, you know, not giving them, undermining their confidence, for example, or putting too much restrictions, you know, not letting them to go out, you know, like putting restriction on her mobility, for example. That also leads to a lot of psychological issue, or not letting her to maybe visit her own family and things like that, making her to feel she is not good enough, you know, or making her feel she is not like, she's ugly and all that, you know, like keeping her, you know, undermining her confidence, not giving her that kind of environment where she could be herself. I think so, and also denying, for example, economic, like, you know, holding back, kind of not giving her enough money, you know, to run the households and things like that, or abusing, for example.
Yeah, okay.
Abuse, verbal abuse.
Verbal abuse.
So
Use-
they're not,
use
they,
of foul
they may
language.
not, he may not be hitting her, but he may be abusing her, and that also has a psychological impact. Too much pressure, for example. A lot of time, in-laws, the women has to, you know, like she enters in a marriage like as a service provider, so she has to provide services, all form of services, like services to husband, that includes sexual services, that, you know, a lot of, there's no concept of marital rape in Pakistan, and I think a lot of women do not know that in Pakistan, marital rape has also been criminalized.
Okay.
There is a law, you know, like Women's Protection Act, which was passed, you know, in 2010, has makes, you know, marital rape as a crime against husband.
Where
There are
it's
very
seen
few-
as a right, actually.
Yeah, where it is seen as a right. So a lot of time, and women are also expected to provide services to in-laws, and, you know, and childcare is. So a lot of time, women are very much
And often,
overburdened, you
ma'am,
know,
the
physically and
perpetrators
psychologically.
are not just the husbands, it's also the matriarch in the
In-laws,
family, the
yes.
mother-in-law who's a woman
Yes,
as well.
sure.
You
Yeah,
would
yeah.
think that maybe they would not, you know, participate in something like that.
Precisely, because, you know, this patriarchy or this concept is not about, you know, men or women. It is about, it's a mindset, you know,
Yes.
and a lot of time women also subscribe to same mindset. They are patriarchal in the same way, you know, because a woman who has herself has suffered, she thinks that her now, you know, a daughter-in-law should behave the same way, or she will, you know, have the similar kind of a patriarchal control
So-
over
the mindset perpetuates kind of thing.
perpetuates, you know. So it's not that it's only men, you know, who are patriarchal in their thinking.
So, ma'am,
Unfortunately, a lot of
The
women
next
are
thing I'd
also.
like to ask, you know, we're talking about the types of domestic abuse and who the perpetrators are. Now, the question is, okay, there's a patriarchal mindset. However, is there also an underlying mental health issue going on over here, that a man can be so aggressive and violent towards another person, particularly someone weaker than him, a woman?
I think it's like, if we'll say it's a kind of a mental illness issue, I think we're just kind of trying to give a protection to men. It's a question of power, you know. Why is it, you know, for example, violence does not take in the sense that where women are more empowered, fully, like where men think, okay, economically or psychologically, and women like us, for example. I mean, the men in our lives are not dare to lift a hand. The reason being, because in terms of power, you know, they feel that, you know, there is a equation, you know, equal between men and women in terms of power. So I think it happens where the men feel they have a power over women, you know.
Okay.
So it is about power, you know, and I don't think it's a kind of a mental health issue, because you will not see, for example, a male domestic servant. I mean, okay, once, rarely it can happen, but for example, a woman who is in position of power, and there are, even in a work environment, and there are men who are working as subordinate, they will not dare to, you know, harass a woman who is in a position of power.
more
Or a man, for example, male domestic servants are often not in a position to inflict, you know, any kind of abuse to a female
That's a very good
woman.
point.
So that means that it is not about the mental health issue, it is about
So
power
they know
issues.
exactly what they're
Yeah,
doing when
so
they
I
do
think
it. Okay.
in a marriage, in the marriage basically there is I think there is a power imbalance socially, culturally and economically as well, where
Okay.
women enter in a marriage as a subordinate, as a
Right.
you know, to a man, to a husband, and so the entire society tells her that he is your mazaji khuda, and so you have to, you know, your whole life should be now subject to whatever he wants you to you know, the way he wants you to dress up or
Right.
live
Ma'am,
the life.
because we're running short of time, I'd like to just ask you one final question, is that what should a woman do if she is being abused? What are the immediate steps that she needs to take?
Obviously, I think that she needs to exit that because one must understand that the milder form of violence can then leads to a very extreme form of violence. A man who could hit or who could slap a woman is capable of killing her as well. So I think the earlier she seeks, you know, kind of a help and try to get try to exit that violent situation is better, you know. So they should be more aware of their rights, and they should be more aware of you know, the kind of redressal mechanisms, you know, where sportive mechanism in terms of where there is legal help is you know, there are provision of legal help, there are provision of, you know, shelter homes and all that. So I think it is very important for women to realize, you know, that
Right.
if she does not really seek help, she might lose her life at some stage, you know.
Right,
So
that's a
sooner
very
she
important
goes
point. Dr. Farzana Bari, thank you so much.
you're very
Unfortunately, that's
welcome.
all the time we have for this segment today.
Sure.
Really appreciate all your input, and I hope this helps girls out there hearing you tell them this very important advice. Viewers, we'll be right back after this break, and we'll speak about our next segment, which is about the line of control and the firing that goes on across it and how it affects lives on this side of the border. Stay with us, please. Welcome back, viewers. Now we're going to be talking about the recent incidences of unprovoked firing across the line of control from occupied Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir on the Azad Kashmir side, and the casualties which it has caused. It's indeed a very big tragedy because ultimately innocent civilians lose their lives. Recently it was a 12-year-old child, a boy and a woman. These are innocent civilians, they're not armed or anything, and also a soldier's life was lost, which is happening very frequently, and it's very tragic. And also then livestock, the firing causes loss of livestock, which also causes loss of income to these poor rural communities. We're going to be speaking about this topic with our guest in our studio today. We have with us Mr. Shafiq Ahmed, who's a senior journalist and analyst. Thank you, sir, so much for being with us today. So we're talking about this unprovoked firing across the line of control from the Indian occupied side towards Pakistan. The Foreign Office has summoned the ambassador, Indian High Commissioner, and have asked them to follow with the 2003 ceasefire agreement. How come this continues with impunity? How come this continues happening and nobody takes them to task and it's not stopped, and it's been happening for years, and it's civilians who are getting affected? Aren't there conventions protecting these people?
Yes, the problem is basically not the recent violation by the Indian security forces along the line of control, but when you see that since the Narendra Modi came into power, the previous government, the previous past 5-year government,
Right.
so the skirmishes and the unprovoked firing from Indian side started, and it increased gradually. So then there was a Pulwama incident, and it is a continuation. The issue is that there is a United Nations military observer group.
Okay.
We have provided them access. Sometimes we show them the area, and we have office in the Azad Kashmir.
Okay.
But India did not allow the UN military observer group to be based in Srinagar. They are based in New Delhi, and they never allowed United Nations observers to visit the Indian occupied Kashmir, some villages, and they are not allowing them. And the Indian time and again said that the UN military observer group is irrelevant to the dispute.
Right.
So the problem is that India is not accepting it as a dispute. The
Right.
problem is this. Despite, like we call it line of control. It's not international border. Line of control mean the border is already, the area is already disputed. But India is in denial mode currently, and for the last 4-5 years, what we have seen, like the killing of Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir also increased. Like the way they are using pellet guns, they have maimed, blinded a lot of Kashmiris, and the new intifada started. And what can I say, that the situation in Kashmir is worse than the 1990s. It is really very serious situation, and you can gauge the situation from the 2 incidents. Let me give the particular names of. One is Abdul Mannan, who was a PhD professor from Aligarh University. He was a Kashmiri. He took up arms against the Indian army, against the occupied army. And one case is Muhammad Rafi Bhatt. He was a professor in Kashmir University in Srinagar.
Okay.
And he took up the arms. So the situation is very grave, and really we must appreciate US President Donald Trump offering to play a mediator role.
Yes.
Because it is very important to stop this unprovoked firing, the killing of innocent Kashmiris, not only in Azad Kashmir, but they are also killing the Kashmiris inside the occupied Kashmir.
Kashmir.
Oh, yes.
And the pellet gun atrocities were recognized by everybody in the world. They were seen as, people were being blinded purposefully and maimed in the thousands. And after that, there's also human rights violations, arrests, killings, rapes. The whole world knows about it now. And now Prime Minister Imran Khan's trip to the United States, which you were just referring to, it seems that Pakistan has gotten this acknowledgement for their efforts to bring about peace in Afghanistan, which brings about credibility to most of the other things we're also saying, particularly where it pertains to Kashmir. And in Kashmir, we're saying that it's a homegrown struggle, right? It's an internal indigenous struggle.
Of course it is indigenous.
Right.
Of course it is indigenous. But India is not accepting it. India is blaming. Everybody know for the last several years is a barbed wire or fence which has divided the Kashmiris into 2, like Azad Kashmir and occupied Kashmir. So they have one narrative which is a false narrative, like they blame infiltration, by the way, and they blamed like the Pulwama attack. They blamed that Pakistan's militant group involved, and everybody know that Adil Bhatt was from Pulwama, the local.
Okay.
So they are not accepting it, and we have a lot of example. Like recently, one Kashmiri fighter, he was also very popular. His name was Musa. Musa, he was killed by the security forces. He accepted martyrdom. And, hundreds of thousands attended the funeral of this Musa. He was commander. He had his own group and fighting against the occupied forces. So it's a totally indigenous movement. And like they cannot say about Burhan Wani. Burhan Wani was a Pakistani? No, not at all. He was also Indian. So it's a very popular movement. And I believe that this visit of our Prime Minister Imran Khan to US was very important, like the offer of Donald Trump should be taken very seriously, and we should a little bit push America to play a mediator role.
Let me ask you this, okay, going forward now, okay, a lot has been said in that meeting that Prime Minister Modi requested for mediation on the Kashmir issue, which made the Indian media go pretty berserk. And then in Pakistan was very, very happy about President Trump offering to mediate. And it seems like there might be some light at the end of the tunnel for the Kashmir issue, which has been, it's one of the longest standing disputes in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's over 70 years long. So now what further steps do you feel are needed to continue this process so that it doesn't just lose its steam right here? Prime Minister Imran Khan is back. So what next? How do we make sure that this actually takes place?
Look, I personally believe this is a very high time for the Kashmir Committee to play a very effective role.
Okay.
Like what we have seen that for the last 10 years during the rule of Pakistan People's Party and PMLN, it was a very ineffective Kashmir Committee because it was headed by Maulana Fazlur Rahman, who was not acceptable to the international community. Now, Fakhr Imam is there, who is very eloquent. He can speak, he can talk very nicely to the international community. So they should highlight the issue, and at every international forum, they should raise the issue of the atrocities being committed by the Indian security forces and others, the reserve forces against the Kashmiris in India, and they should highlight about those people who are blinded through pellet guns, and they should put more pressure through America. America should play a role to put pressure on India.
So they should highlight the human rights excesses.
Everywhere they should do it. They should handle the situation diplomatically. No, they should put pressure. Kashmir Committee should go to different European countries to highlight the plight of the Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir. So it is more, a responsibility on the Kashmir Committee. They should play an important role, by the way.
Right, okay. And Prime Minister Imran Khan, at his talk at the Institute of Peace in the United States, he also mentioned, when he was asked that what kind of a resolution would you like to the Kashmir issue, and he said, according to what the Kashmiris want. Now, can you elaborate a bit on that? I mean, I think everybody was happy to hear that. And, these are all statements about making peace in Afghanistan, in Kashmir, with your neighbors, with Iran, with India. So he's being seen now as a peacemaker. So,
yes, it's amazing. Honestly speaking, like this is, the Kashmiris are also very happy. I talked to some people in Srinagar. They are happy. But the actual problem is that there is a little bit strained relation between India and the US currently.
Yes.
Because on the issue of Iran,
Okay.
because there is a sanction on Iran, and US asked all the nation not to buy oil from Iran. But India said no, they will purchase oil from Iran.
Because that's the arrangement they already
Yes,
had.
so the dispute started, and then there was some trade misunderstanding, or you can say strained trade relation between India and America currently. And recently, India purchased some arms from Russia. So, India is confused where to go, because there was a shift of the foreign policy of India from from Russia gradually to the US. Now things are changing. So this is a high time for Pakistan to put a little bit more pressure on America to convince America to please play important role in Kashmir, because people are being killed by the brutal Indian security forces because they have license to kill Kashmiris. What kind of license? Let me tell you. The first license is a special powers given to the security forces. They can enter any Kashmiri house without any legal or permission. They can enter. That is why since 1990, more than 100,000 Kashmiris have been killed, and then thousands of women are raped.
Would you say it's a kind of ethnic cleansing going on over there, where they're trying to
Of
decrease
course.
the population of the Muslims?
Yes, already look. they have already started doing this in Jammu, because in 2016 the BJP government announced a 10-year economic plan for Jammu. As per law, no Indian can purchase land in the Indian occupied Kashmir. The same like Pakistani cannot purchase in Azad Kashmir. But they have there is a special law they have enacted. The law says that any non-Kashmiri can buy land in Jammu for in industrial state for on lease for 40 years, and that can be extendable for 50 more years. Mean for 90 years, a non-Kashmiri can get a land on lease. It means that they are trying to change the demography of Jammu in the first step, because in Kashmir it will be difficult for them, because like more than 90% are Muslim population, and they don't want that the Indian occupied, they don't want to remain with India, by the way. So Jammu, they have already started working. They have established some colonies where the Hindu Pandits have started living there. So they have already started the ethnic cleansing, you can say, or like changing the demography of Kashmir.
Okay, and the rest of India also, there's a lot of persecution of Muslims going on right now in
Oh.
Assam, and with the citizenship issues going on, that can you elaborate a bit on those as well? Because how can India afford to get away with all of this in their country, and how can they afford, with now they're emerging as an economic power, with this going on, can they manage to sustain these human rights abuses?
Absolutely not. The reason is that it is Hindutva is part of their manifesto. Hindutva means that if you want to live in India, so you have to adopt the way of life of Hindus. You belong to Christian community, or you are Jain Mat, or if you belong to, if you are Buddhist, or if you are a Muslim. So you have to adopt the way of life like a Hindu. This is what they are. The first movement they started under this Hindutva slogan was the Ghar Wapsi, return to the home. I mean, they converted a lot of Christians, a lot of Muslim, and the Jain Mat people back into Hinduism. And they paid some money to the poor Muslim, because they were very poor people. They paid money to convert them into Hindus forcefully, and they are still going on. Like they have. They are planning to have this Gau Raksha ministry, and the vigilante justice. You have seen that they are on so many occasions they have brutally wounded and killed some Muslim, and also some low-caste Hindus. We have seen that low-caste Hindus are also victim of this Hindutva slogan. Like there are a lot of video uploads when the Hindu extremists are forcing Muslims to say Jai Ramji or Jai Shri Ram. Like one of the Imam was brutally beaten by the Hindu mob in Haryana. So these kind of incidents are going on, and the international community should take notice of this.
Right.
It's very important.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights on this issue. A lot of details which are very useful for us. Mr. Shafiq Ahmed, thank you again for being with us today. Inshallah, we'll be having more shows with you. And now I'd like to announce some good news that Sajjad Ali, who is the son of famed mountaineer Muhammad Ali, has scaled the second highest peak, which is K2. So many congratulations to that family. This is a big achievement that this young man has scaled K2. His father is also a mountaineer. His name is Muhammad Ali Satpara, and it seems like this is a family profession of mountaineers, which we often see in the northern areas, especially in Hunza and etc., where they have families who are into mountaineering and they work as guides, etc. So this young man has now scaled K2, which is a very difficult mountain to climb, as is known all over the world, and many lives are lost trying to scale this peak every year. A lot of foreigners from Europe come to climb K2. And often they get injured, and they have to face a lot of difficulty on this peak, and it sometimes seems to be even harder than climbing Mount Everest, which is the tallest mountain. So many congratulations again to Sajid Ali and his family for scaling K2. And now we're going to be talking about the stock market and find out from Mr. Siraj Mankani, how did the stock market today. We are going to ask him because recently we've been seeing that the stock market has been very slow and sluggish due to investors still feeling a little bit wary about investing in stocks at the moment due to the economic situation, the price of oil, and particularly the devaluation of the rupee is causing certain hesitation in investors, and some of the sectors are also they're also suffering due to the rupee devaluation, because naturally their raw materials are costing a lot more, and the price of oil going up due to the price of the dollar going up is also causing these different sectors to be damaged. Particularly we've been seeing not a very good performance with the cement as well as the automobile sector, which has paused its manufacturing at the moment as well because of the low sales. So we will be talking to Mr. Sajjad Mankani, who's going to be online with us. He's online with us right now. Mr. Sajjad Mankani, thank you for joining us again.
Welcome.
So can you tell us, has the market improved at all since yesterday we saw a little bit of a negative movement in the market? What has been happening today in the stock market?
Yes, today market actually went down by around 260 odd points and then recovered considerably, and however it didn't show any much gains, but it was a healthy sign that market closed positive at least. So the market sentiment was a little bearish in the morning, but later on we have seen some buying from the foreign side, which helped to bring the index to positive level.
Right. So which sectors are we seeing improve? Which is causing the improvement in the stock markets?
Improvement in the banking sector, and there was slight improvement in the cements and other sectors like fertilizer, etc.
Mm-hmm. And which sectors would you say are still a bit sluggish at the moment?
The sectors that are still sluggish are automobile sector, and mainly I would say automobile, and some pharmaceutical companies are still sluggish right now.
So would you say that anybody at the moment when stocks are usually down, investors are usually encouraged to invest because stocks are valued much less than they should be and there may be more of a discount. So is there anything that you would recommend right now to investors?
I would say that investors should selectively look at the stocks in the fertilizer sector. They can see the stocks in the cement sector and some banking stocks. So
thank you so much, Mr. Sajjad Mankani, for your feedback today on the stock market. So now we're going to be talking about the plastic bag ban that's going to be in effect from the 14th of August. The Minister of State for Climate Change, Zartaj Gul, began a countdown yesterday until the 14th of August, which is the date after which single-use plastic bags will be banned and their sale and usage will become an offence punishable with a fine. As an alternative to plastic bags, the consumers and shoppers can use recyclable bags made of fabrics, jute, canvas. They can also use reusable plastic bags or propylene green bags, in the absence of which people can also use personal handbags or shopping bags, as is customary in other parts of the world. You can also recycle and reuse the plastic bags that you have in your homes for further grocery items until you have to dispose of them. The manufacturers of plastic bags will be fined from 100,000 to 500,000 rupees after the 14th of August, and raids will be carried out to enforce this rule in the capital. These measures have been taken due to the fact that plastic bags are the biggest problem in choking drains, sewerage and streams across Pakistan, and they are a major contributing factors to the floods that occur in urban areas as well. So we had a lot of things to talk about today, and thank you so much for joining us today, and inshallah we'll see you on our next program of World Today. From me, Sharmeen Ali, and our team of World Today, thank you and bye-bye for now.